This episode of Nuff Said is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
Are you sorry? Are you heartfully sorry for all that you have done? It doesn't matter, because now is the time of your just punishment. Hello, heroes. Welcome to Just Punishments. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. Welcome back to One-Eyed Jacks. Punisher, Season 2, Episode 5. It's not a trap if you know it's coming. That's Frank's philosophy. But Donnie opens up and Pilgrim plans a visit to an unholy land. Our director this week is Stacy Passon. Jerry Conway and John Romita Sr. gets those Marvel credits. Let's see here. Andrew also gets a nice little Marvel credit with all this. Steve Lightfoot gets us our created by. Dario Scartapane gets our written by. And our executive story editor is Angela Lamanna. And then hardest working unsung lady in show business, or man in show business, Ken Christensen is just a regular story editor, because how can you have an executive story editor without a regular story editor for them to...
Indeed.
So this episode opens up with, what's her name now? Is it Rachel? Is it Annie? Amy.
Amy, right.
Amy is teaching the Punisher 3-card Monty.
Right.
And is basically saying, it is a scam. No, I'm not palming it. You're just not understanding that I am trying to fool you. And you know I'm trying to fool you, but you keep on playing because you don't understand the only winning move is don't play the game. Because the deck is stacked against you.
Even when you think you found the answer, it's only meant to look that way.
Yeah, and that was really cool. I really liked her play on 3-card Monty. The suggestion that there even is some honesty to it, that it's just a sleight of hand and misdirection, not an active palming of the card.
Right. I forget if it was in this show or another show where someone was talking about carnival workers, and he always came up and tried to play the games, but then he realized that he wasn't playing the game. The carnival workers were actually playing the game. The game was if they could sucker us out of our money, and we were just part of the game. And we thought we were playing the game. So it reminds me of that a little bit.
And as a man who has fallen into that pit, let me tell you, that is some truth there. Coney Island is a dangerous place.
Yeah.
Pocket full of money. But you might win a bear if they take pity on you. Oh, goodness.
Eventually.
Eventually. Eventually they're like, yeah, it's about $100 of playing. They say, hey, yeah, you won a bear fair and square. Isn't that great? You're a bear winner. Go home, kid. You're making me feel bad. But this is, and I love this, because she really makes this point about how everyone knows it's a scam, yet people keep on playing it. And it's like, it's not even like, it's like, no one isn't like, wow, they don't have 3-card Monty in Vegas, because there are laws against these kinds of things.
Right.
But people play it. And she makes that, I think it's a little sexist to say you never see women playing 3-card Monty. Though to be fair, I don't know if that's true. But honestly, I don't know the last time I actually saw a 3-card Monty game actually being played.
I think I might have seen it twice in my life in the subway.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember when I went to New York in the 80s, I think I saw some 3-card Monty once or twice. I think Giuliani got rid of that stuff. I don't know if it still exists. Although maybe it exists out in other places far away from the reach of the Disney Corporation.
Right. Right.
But yeah, it is an interesting take, and a lot of this episode I think does deal with this idea of there being a stacked deck
Hmm.
and everyone knowing it's a stacked deck, but that no one is willing to stop playing because there's too much at stake for whatever it is that they're saying everything's at stake for.
Yeah.
It's like as they say, if people walked away, probably stuff would go away.
Yeah, I mean, some amount of nefarious activity has to go on for the world to function. And if you just let this be the one, I think everybody would probably get on with their life, and a lot less people would probably die in the future.
Well, I mean, the truth of it is, it's not like the Punisher's stopping nefarious activity
Hmm.
in this episode per se. It's really just that the Punisher is trying to get to the specific. He's trying to find out what the nefarious activity. He's trying to figure out who he really has to kill to get this all to stop. It's like
Right.
okay, because it's like I'm killing this guy, I'm killing that guy. None of these are the right people to kill. I just want to kill one guy and go home.
But does he though? Because she makes an interesting point. He's like, it's like you've been waiting for this, and they keep hitting that point home. And it's interesting. In this episode, you get what's his name, the preacher man,
Oh, Pilgrim, yeah.
Pilgrim, like hitting himself with the whip. What do they call it? Self-flagellation.
Flagellation, yeah.
Right. So he's doing that, and in a way, he's doing it as penance. And in a way, Frank maybe is taking this as a weird warped way of seeing the world, where he views that as his penance or his punishment or his flagellation.
Yeah, but what I gotta say about people who do the self-flagellation, I think they like it more than they don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like when you make that as your choice of this is my ritual. It's like,
Yeah.
well, that must be something you're kind of enjoying, because I don't think people who really don't like the pain choose that as a method of
Yeah.
dealing
Most
with their
certainly.
sin.
Most certainly.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, like, it's, I guess what they've done is taken something that is an expression of their being and molded it to the philosophy that they ascribe to. And in that way, in their penance, instead of saying a bunch of Hail Marys, they're like, that's not going to do it for how bad of a person I am. So I need something much more severe, or that's the way they interpret it. But, the same people that cut themselves are the same people that would do this.
Well,
It's
exactly.
just a different vernacular used to describe that feeling and that expression.
Yeah, and the reality is, the reason they don't say the Hail Marys is because that would actually be painful for them. That would be difficult for them. It would be boring. And what wouldn't that be so horrible that you actually had to sit with your own thoughts and ask God to actually forgive you and to actually recite this prayer over and over, when I could just like beat myself and feel like, well, now I'm good.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of what it is. I think that these guys in the Punisher and Pilgrim, in their own ways, are. I think you're right that they are kind of looking for that visceral release. I think I don't think that the Punisher necessarily wants to get beaten up the way he does, but he certainly takes a punch like a champion.
Yeah, and he's proud of it. Like when he comes back into the or Madani's apartment, I guess, and he's completely blooded up, and she says, did it go good or did it go really bad? And he just puts his thumbs up and smiles at her like, yeah, look at me. Like a cat who dragged in like a dead bird,
Yeah. Man, I tell you never feel more sorry for Turk than in this episode. Because he is like, I am legit going legit. I'm doing my thing. And suddenly the freaking Punisher walks into me.
Well, I mean, I doubt he was actually going legit. That's just what you have to say, I guess. That's what I expect of him.
Well, you know what I'll say is, I think he's got a good front. Because you need a good front if you want to be. You got to be legit enough to have a front.
Exactly.
Now he's still, for exclusive clientele like Hogarth, he will show up when she asks.
Yeah.
But honestly, he's not into crime because he's not a supervillain. He doesn't delight in crime because it's crime. He delights in crime because it's a business and it's a quick and easy way to make money. And
Yeah.
with the legalization of pot and head shops and things of that nature, this is a quick and easy way for him to make money.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to, he orders his stuff out of a catalog and it comes right to his location. And,
Yeah.
the only problem is that all these freaking superheroes keep on coming in and smashing his stuff. Honestly, actually, this was like the nicest thing Punisher did was that he didn't get into a fight at the head shop.
Yeah.
It's like the guys all came there with their guns and they're going to smash up that head shop. And then it's like, nope. He went to the gym.
Yeah.
But we get a nice, some nice moments with Pilgrim and his wife here.
Yeah, there's interesting stuff going. Like, I don't understand what this family is doing for them. Like, if she's dying, what have they actually done that, for some reason, is the reason Pilgrim feels beholden to them? I don't understand.
Well, I mean, the short answer is they're probably covering her medical bills.
Oh, so to have gotten her this far. Okay, that's...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, honestly, that nice big house doesn't pay for itself. And clearly, the man chops wood in his backyard. We don't see him having a day job.
Yeah.
So basically, he is a retainer for this family, and they have provided him with this really lovely life.
Yeah.
And all he has to do is every so often he has to go out and
take care of business.
Yeah, well,
But yeah, that's a tough scene where she says, I want you to be the last thing I see. What a, roundabout, clever way of asking him to stay. Man, that's building your argument into a single sentence. God.
Well, yeah, because at the end of the day, that is the hardest part of this is that, he does have to go out and she really wishes he could stay. But at the same time, and this is kind of the crux of it, is he may not have the courage to stay. Right. Because that's something so much more painful than anything else. And more to the point, when you talk, like we said, he whips himself because that's easy. Yeah. That is it's basic, it's pain, it's something I know. It's something that isn't overwhelming me the way that actually facing this emotional pain might be.
Right.
And, all things being equal, he probably could say no to these people on some level or another. Maybe not, maybe so, but at the end of the day, he is making his choices based on what cares for his family and what helps him avoid the pain.
Right.
The real pain. Because that's the thing. And I think there's actually that's next episode with the school, but
okay.
These are men who choose the painful life because it's easy. And I think if there's one thing to say about this stuff, when you look at these guys who are having trouble readjusting to life outside or life in the real world, what it seems to be is like that it's hard. They have a hard time adjusting, and the reason why the Punisher is such a wish fulfillment isn't because, oh, I wish I had the power to do this, but because it's a guy who chose something easy. And, not easy in the sense that it's not difficult, but easy in the sense that it doesn't deal with the emotional trauma he's been through. There's a lot of talk right now about Endgame, which we've both seen.
Right.
And everyone is like, there's a lot of chatter out about people being mean to Thor. And, like, oh, they make all these jokes about him. But I think and they say, don't they understand that he's going through so much, trauma. But I think the thing that people forget is that actually everyone in Endgame is going through huge amounts of trauma. And not for nothing, the one line they always go back to is a line that's said by Rhodey about, do you know what's coursing through my veins? And he says, cheese whiz.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, Rhodey has actually endured way more trauma than everybody else, because Rhodey is the guy who long before the snap already lost his legs.
And this is what annoys me about people. Mm-hmm. You think Thor, the god of thunder, is going to take to heart a simple comment? Do you think he cares? Do you think he gave it a second thought? All of a sudden, we're explicating it like it means something. It's a silly thing.
Well, yeah.
And he was meant to deliver some points of humor when we really needed it. And I think he was an interesting pivoting point in a lot of ways for a lot of the emotional ride of some of these scenes. It gets really emotional, boom, and he sets up there, and he delivered them so beautifully because he had to straddle looking sad and feeling sad, but saying the line to give the joke back to everybody, because in that moment, I'm sure in their world, everybody needed a laugh also. And if he can give back to the group and make everybody feel a little better, I think that's something that would make him feel like he's doing something too. So, I don't understand all that's, it's
well, yeah, and not for nothing, the character that he most emulates in this is, of course, the character of Volstagg, who is, of course, in his own way based on the character of Falstaff, who is this fat, jovial guy in Shakespeare who is always talking about all of the wars he's fought in. But at the same time, that whole point is that, yes, he's fat and he's jovial because this is how he can deal with his trauma. Mm. And in that way, being the fat, jovial guy is the way. Essentially, when you make a joke about Thor being fat, he says, yes, I'm doing my part. I'm making this horrific situation seem less so. Yeah. And I'm trying to help everyone through. And yeah, it is a nightmare, but it is the way that I'm dealing with that. And I think that in her own way, I think Amy also is a person who is trying to bring humor and perspective to things. And when she's dealing with these people who are clearly, well off the rails, Right. I definitely think that, the Punisher is well off the rails, as much as he wants to pretend he's not.
Oh yeah.
He is.
I don't even think he's making any bones about that. I think he's just saying, I'm going to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think he's come to terms with that too.
Yeah. But, it is just, as I say, it goes back to that 3-card Monty that we have at the opener. The one-eyed Jacks,
Yeah, it's interesting because he says, it's a trap. I'm going to go anyway. And he goes, at least if I know it's a trap, I know it's coming. So it's like sort of like knowing that the check hook is coming to, bob under it and counter it, Yeah. But what she's saying with the 3-card Monty is he might be fooling you with that also. Even when I told you how it was done, because I knew you were expecting it to be where I put it somewhere else,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you'll never win.
And this is, I think, what we get with this is that, as we get the big Punisher fight at the end of this, which is, man, that is, and I gotta say, man, I am like so torn on that final with the final guy with the final fighter at the end, the first fighter and the last fighter.
Yeah, Keith Jardine.
Yeah. And what they, and his face gets totally Toxic Avengered in this. And
yeah, it's amazing. I thought it was great because it's like so much of what you see in TV violence is so exaggerated and it never makes sense. And even in this scene, it was a little ridiculous, but it is hyper-violent and stylized in their own way, so it's forgivable. Yeah. But at one point where he finally grabs that weight and starts, I'm like, come on. You know how much damage that would do to somebody? And the next shot they pull, I was like, that's the kind of damage it would do to somebody.
Exactly.
My God. But it was well done. I thought it was so good. And a lot of people, they want to make it look like anybody can take anything, but that was beautiful. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, it was really great. Honestly, my biggest complaint about that whole scene is why did none of the Russians think to grab a barbell and hit Frank Castle with them? Why is Frank
Well,
the only
that's
one
true.
thinking like, oh yeah, I'm going to use any weapon I can get my hands on? You know, I guess.
Although that does speak to sort of the mentality of somebody who's trained to do that versus guys who are just really big and used to having their guns.
Yeah, or it could be even that they that they see that as the coward's way because they're being honorable fighting with their fists
And
because they
there's 8 of
feel that
them.
yeah, exactly. There's 8 of them. They don't think they have to go. They don't think they have to go that line.
Right,
But
right, right, right.
see where that got them. You know,
Yeah.
it's like fighting fair is all well and good unless the other guy decides not to. And of course, it
Right.
is a no. It's not like there was rules here, you know.
Right.
This isn't Marcus of Queensberry here. This is you're in a fight with the Punisher,
Right.
and I thought it's interesting. This is going to be a theme that we're going to have next episode as well, which is that the Punisher lets the Russian mobster live.
Hmm.
Though that doesn't last very long because, of course, Pilgrim does what the Punisher doesn't do.
Right.
That the Pilgrim comes in and ends that whole conversation. And does Billy read the Doctor's notes in this episode?
I don't think so.
No, it's next episode. Okay, yeah, because I gotta wonder who KM is for next episode, and I part of me thinks it might be Pilgrim
Hmm.
if we're gonna do a small world storyline here. But yeah, yeah.
Or whoever is. Well, they said the name of like. I guess that's next episode. They said, okay, yeah, but right. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's hard when you watch these back to back.
Yeah.
But I mean, these are some great episodes in general, and one thing we do get at the end of this episode is we do see the psychiatrist clearly dealing with her own stuff in opening the window.
Yeah. Does she have superpowers or like what was that wobble at the end?
Oh, the wobble was her panic attack.
Oh, okay. And I was like, this is a show about superheroes. I haven't seen any superpowers in a minute, so maybe this is something interesting. I was like, oh, maybe not.
Yeah, it's definitely but there's this very ritualized way she opens the curtains, and we see that more again next episode. But yeah, I get the feeling that it's definitely an emotional crux. That this is her trauma, and I don't know where her trauma comes from.
And she's another one, like she's cutting herself, so you see the scars on her hand, on her arm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean.
And she's surrounded by strange people because that military guy that's also having weird thoughts that Russo seems to find.
Yeah, he finds him. He kind of tracks him down,
Yeah.
And although it's interesting because it's one of these things where you're never quite sure who's really the manipulator here. Is it that, Russo finds him and then manipulates him into something, or does Russo finding him have the guy also find Russo, and then the storyline expands from there? Then it's the other guy manipulating Russo as much as Russo manipulates anyone. So.
Yeah, that's interesting because this guy did show up to the meeting where, the guy, what's his name? Clint, I think?
No, Curtis.
Curtis. He shows up to Curtis's thing where Curtis used to fight with Russo. So he might have been plotting from the get-go, but he's also there, and he's also at the same doctor that Russo's at. That is a very interesting point.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if it's that Machiavellian. I actually think it might just be that.
Oh, fair enough. But a lot of little angles where he's intersecting,
Well, what it is everyone's improvising, and at the end of the day, though, but the idea is that you're somehow inclined to think of Russo as the master manipulator, but I think as Madani kind of says in this, he's exactly what he presented himself to be, a completely broken man. and a highly dangerous broken man, but just
Yeah.
not the guy not the threat she thought he was, just a completely different threat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that is this episode. We get a lot more interesting stuff next episode, with the oligarch and all that kind of stuff. And
Right. The one thing I thought was really great and worth mentioning is this scene where Russo wakes up at first in the psychiatrist's house, and the way she talks him down, it's so well done. And he plays that scene so well, where he's constantly thinking about like escaping and settling down, and getting defensive and attacking, and all those emotions are sort of like found individually and played individually, and I thought that was a really, really great scene. Beautiful piece of acting by the guy who plays Russo.
Yeah, and not for nothing. I mean, we get throughout this, moments of Russo, being okay until he gets triggered.
Right.
And like when he's in the bar and he looks at the mirror and he sees the flash, and it's just all takes him right back.
Yeah.
And
which leads me to think that he genuinely is lost in his mind.
Oh, he 100% is lost in his mind. He is not all there. There's that is the crux of that biscuit. He is not. He is not well. Mr. Blackwell, he is not well.
It's crazy. What a crazy character, but he makes you sort of empathize with him in some ways. Like, I feel bad for him.
Well, of course, Well, anybody that, as he says to his doctor, you've got trauma too. The difference is you actually remember what your trauma is.
Yeah, that's a
which is like in its own way.
Thought.
Yeah, and then I love what Curtis says about Russo, which was that it wasn't the war that screwed up Russo; it was greed. That when he got back, that's when things went nuts. It wasn't the war. The war was where he was fine.
And the same thing with Pilgrim, right?
Well, we don't know what Pilgrim's story is yet. I don't know. We know there's something. Like I said, he's got the tattoos that he's trying to remove, and he certainly has been to New York, because that's the idea, is that he is from New York. And
I definitely see that sort of energy from him now that we're talking about Russo, and you mentioned that about Frank and all these guys that come back from war and they don't know how to deal with it, and they end up enlisting into situations out of greed or out of escapism, or out of that's the only way they know how to be, and they get caught up in the whirlwind of this sort of life. And maybe that's why he's on a retainer there, where that's all he can be.
Yeah. Well, it's, and in that way, it's like Russo. What did Russo do?
Yeah.
He came back and became a soldier of fortune,
Like, how much choice did he really have, like, percentages-wise?
Well, honestly, he probably had lots of choices, but he made the choice to do what was the easy money, just like Turk.
Right.
The difference is that Turk knows when not to play three-card Monty. Turk knows when to walk away and say, you know what, this ain't worth it.
Turk was in the war?
No.
Oh.
Turk takes the easy way.
Gotcha.
And when legitimate business suddenly became more viable than illegitimate business, he chose legitimate business, because it was an easier, faster way to make money. So that's the thing. It's the easy way isn't always necessarily the bad way. It's just the way that you're working through it.
Right.
Anyway, any final thoughts on tonight's episode, Mozz?
No, just I love the fight sequence again. I thought that was really, really fun.
Honestly, they always give you a good fight sequence in this. I did want to say I thought Madani at the group session was really good.
Oh, yes, indeed. That was a real highlight too.
Yeah, because and again shows this fact that as his doctor tells him, you don't have a monopoly on trauma.
Yeah.
And just because you're a vet doesn't mean you're the only person that had trauma. There were a lot of people at the same place you were who didn't wear green, who also had to go through this trauma, and you can even extrapolate that back to just, some guy whose country that was. Like,
Right. Or her having to deal with her partner getting shot out there.
Exactly. Well, that's what I mean. That was a guy who was just fighting for his country. But he
Right.
wasn't a soldier. He wasn't anybody special. But he was a guy who's trying to do the right thing
Yeah.
and gets ground up in the gears.
Yeah.
Just gets thrown in a hole. And that is the point. If there is to be a point, that you you have to deal with this stuff. And sometimes I think people want to insulate themselves and say, look how special I am because of the trauma I've endured. But at the end of the day, it's like, no, it's not special. Your trauma isn't special. Lots of people had trauma, and don't think you're better than someone just because you had trauma. What you need to do is try to find a way to live a better life.
Right.
Oh, but that's that theory. Okay. Boom. Yes. So, Mozz, in the meantime, if people would like to talk to you about trauma, about, superheroes, or just the things everyone's going through, how can they find you?
Oh, they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZ MANZOOR.
And, of course, you can always write to me in the old-fashioned email way to way, or Mozz and Paz one state at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. Of course, follow me on the Twitters. I live tweet Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. coming back, and Cloak and Dagger, and all sorts of other things at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the two E's in the middle.
Bing!
For quality. Dear listeners, you are absolved of your sin. Go in peace and sin no more. But you will. And when you do, return for your just punishments. Good night.